Good morning, Amy. How are you?
Good morning, Alexis. I'm lovely. How are you?
Good. We are in Libra season. And yeah, I can't believe we're already towards the end of September. We're moving out of September soon. And October is a big month. So that's really what I'm feeling. I'm feeling like we've just entered Libra season. We just had the equinox. We're in this transition point towards the end of the year, right? We're towards the end of 2021. But October comes with some big forward motion and some big energy shifts. So that's what I really have my eye on is what's going on in October, what's to come.
Fabulous. I know I am definitely feeling I'm noticing the judgment collectively that can be the shadow side of Libra. As we've moved into Libra season with Mercury there and the action of Mars and the snippiness of Venus and Scorpio. Um, and it feels like there's a really big invitation to offer everyone to step back from your judgment, to get curious, to, if you're going to take action to research and learn things, and to dig in to question why you're judging. Do you feel judged? So you're judging outward. Um, so like I've just been really sitting in that this week as we've transitioned with the equinox just on Wednesday, because it's the 22nd of September today when we're recording this. Right? No, is it the 22nd? It's the 24th. I don't even know what day it is.
It's the
I'm
24th.
obviously stuck on the equinox right now. I'm
You're
just
stuck
like
on equinox.
spinning on Wednesday.
Yes, because we just had, right, the equinox on the 22nd. So we had that. So we are recording a few days after the equinox. Yeah, and just to touch on some points as you were bringing in some elements that you were talking about, to remember that Venus and Mars, who are about both, it's kind of like the balance of our feminine masculine, that relationship, that union, they are both in their detriment. So they are in signs that they are not comfortable in. And so in astrology, there's signs that planets have their home signs. They have signs where they're exalted, where they love to be. It may not be home, but it's like kind of like second home. And then they have signs where in their fall and their detriment. And detriment, it's like the worst, which we don't believe in. I have plenty of planets in detriment. Like I don't believe there's any good, bad. But it's just, to me, it's an uncomfortable place. It's just, there's some challenges that arise when planets are in their detriment. It's no better or worse than anything else. But Mars is in Libra, and his home sign is Aries, which is the opposite of Libra. It is that fiery, that activating quality, right? He's the warrior. In Libra is very balance, harmony. It is like the opposite of war. And so Mars, who just wants to take action, who just wants to do, he is like, I don't know what to do here. Like I am in this like harmonious place. But it's beautiful too, because he gets to try to activate these pieces that he's not as comfortable with. So that's something to remember, right? That there's this collective like uncomfortable quality to that. And Mars is such, if you really follow Mars through the zodiac, he really does activate. Like when you look at where his big activations are, you can look at what's happening globally, and it's just like, it's fascinating to watch how activating Mars really is. And then we look at Venus, who's in Scorpio, and one of her home signs is Taurus, which is opposite Scorpio, and it's very sensual, it's earthy, it's very this abundance of the earth. And then you go to Scorpio, which is hidden, it's underneath, right? It's Taurus, you can see and sense things. In Scorpio, there's a hidden and a mysterious quality to it. I personally love Venus in Scorpio, but it is that uncomfortable place where there's the unknown. That you can't see everything like you can when you're, walking through a garden and everything's beautiful. It's like this hidden, mysterious quality that comes to when we feel into Venus. She is our relationships. She is our self-worth. she's all of these pieces. And so to have both of Venus and Mars in their detriment is really, really interesting.
I love that you said the difference of walking into a garden and seeing everything. Like what dropped in immediately was mycelium, like the mycelium networks, and how we don't see them. And they are such a vital, vital part of death and rebirth. Like I think a Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, and this ending piece, this like moving into like deep truth. And how sometimes oftentimes if like there's a lack of alignment, deep truth ends things.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I just thought of mycelium networks and how beautiful they are,
Yeah.
and how deep and how hidden they are, and how vital they are. They are the communication system that trees and forests use to keep the forest as a whole healthy, for a parent tree to make sure they're moving their offspring far away if they're sick. So yeah, Venus and Scorpio is mycelium networks to me, apparently.
I love that. Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense with, I mean, we are in Libra season, Mercury is in Libra, Mars is in Libra. So we have a lot of qualities of relationships and in communication with others, right?
Yeah.
Libra is also an air sign, and it is about relationships, how we are in relationship with others. And that is that under current of the mycelium network. And so I love that, because Venus, it is that deep truth. You said deep truth, and that is really what I feel about Scorpio in general, is finding the deep truth. And then when you feel into Venus and Scorpio, it's deep truth in relationships and also in our self-worth, right? Because it's both. It's always both. But yeah, there's such a deep dive. It feels like, especially we have Mercury retrograde in Libra as well. Like,
check out episode 20 for more on that.
Yes, we did a whole episode on Mercury retrograde, particularly around this Libra Mercury retrograde, but it talks about Mercury retrograde in general. Totally check that out. But yeah, we had this extra deep dive because it feels like come October, things are like, okay, like it's go time, lots of forward motion, lots of retrograde planets move direct. And one of them that's coming to mind is Pluto, who is about that deep dive, that transformation. He rules Scorpio. And so, yeah, it feels like before that happens, before the forward motion, we're doing this deep dive, like in the mycelium network, in the like undercurrents, really getting to some truths that we couldn't see at the beginning of the year. You know, if we feel into the year as a whole, it's like we are at this point where things are really coming to the surface. Things that we've been working on all year are really coming up and really like coming to a head. So yeah, I love that. And the fact that we are in Libra season, that there's this like communicating with others. We get Mercury retrograde in Libra. Yeah, it's a chance to really decide for yourself what you need, what you want, what your truth is. And we get the chance when we're in Libra season for everything to be reflected back to us through our relationships. How perfect.
It's beautiful. And I love it. And I know, looking at the chart for the equinox, the chart that happens on the equinox or the solstice often reflects kind of the energy for that season. So this chart with Venus and Scorpio, Mars in Libra, like really, I just want to just remind everybody that there is a difference between judgment and discernment. And rather than throwing out judgment, like get curious, really, really, really get curious. Libra is about balance and harmony. And we have so much division right now. We have so much pulling apart and widening of the gap. I think about when my son and I were in London, and Mind the Gap is all over the underground. Our gap is really, really huge right now. And we're going to see more of the issues that we've been struggling with, particularly in the United States, around social justice, around hidden agendas, et cetera, coming up and surfacing. So get curious. You can fall into judgment by all means. Nobody is going to get in your way except for yourself. So I invite you. Normally I'm like, could you get out of your own way? This time I'm going to ask you to get in your way. Get in your own way, slow yourself down and get curious. Why are you judging? What research could you do? What could you learn? Who could you talk to? Who could you listen to? Mercury, he's a trickster. He's in Libra right now. He's going to be presenting us with options and asking us to step into our sovereignty. What do we believe? And can we hold that from a place of discernment rather than judgment on others or judgment on ourselves?
Yeah. And it feels, just to drop in as well, you brought up kind of what we're going in collectively, especially the United States. But we are also coming up on our Pluto return in February. It goes exact, but we're in that energy. I'm sure you can feel it, right? It's almost like we feel back to Pluto return, the American Revolution, and like the country being born. It's our first Pluto return. And so as that happens, you can feel the undercurrent of like the icky stuff that doesn't work anymore coming to the surface, right? So don't be surprised if over the next few months into February, as all this forward motion comes, as Pluto goes direct in October, we get some like collective just stuff. I'll just say stuff and just leave it at that.
it could get uglier because I know Pluto is entering in October his fifth square with Eris. And Eris is sitting in the place that she was in when good old Chris Columbus landed in the Americas. And that was a little rough. I don't know if anybody is aware of the fact that that was a little rough. His arrival here brought disease and death and conquest and icky things to the Americas. It brought good things and it brought icky things. So how do we balance that? There we are. We're back at Libra. And I know, Alexis, you last night had mentioned to me when we were talking that Neptune is in the same place he was during the Salem witch trials.
Yeah.
We have some major outer planets hanging out in the same places they were when there were traumas that happened in this land, in the United States. And so that is bringing in this energy of how do we heal this? You know, I think about the witch trials, so much of that was sister wound. And it's definitely something that I've been seeing coming up as, you know, there's a push-pull between women who view each other as competition. Like, what are we competing against? What are we competing for? There is plenty. So it's just interesting to me that we've got our Pluto return, that we're in it energetically. It goes exact February, but Pluto's a slow moving guy. We're in it. Yeah. And we've been in it. That we've got Eris, who is slower than Pluto, who is in this position of like the discovery by white people of the Americas. We've got Neptune in the place that he was when we were busy being more afraid of witches than the people who burnt them. Like, what? Yeah. We're more afraid of wise women than we are of the people who are torturing them and burning them. We've got some major shit to work out here, people. Chop, chop.
Yes. And also just to throw in for Eris, for those who aren't familiar with Eris, Eris is the goddess of discord. And she is the one who dropped the apple that started the Trojan War, in a very short nutshell. So she's chaos. She is chaos. She's chaos to reveal the truth, is what it comes down to. But it is chaos. And I think the piece to feel into is, you know, you hear the patriarchy and the like toxic masculine and what we've been in for many generations of the patriarchy trying to control. And it's not just men against women, right? It's just this energy of control and power, distorted control and power over sovereignty, right? No, regardless of gender. But you brought up the point of the sister wound. And so the sister wound is our feminine, right? Again, regardless of gender, feminine to feminine. And that feels like a really big piece as we're going through this whole healing of the masculine, again, within ourselves. And so regardless of gender, but as we're going through healing the masculine from that distorted, toxic power and control place, it feels like the healing the feminine is really important too. And the feminine's been on a different journey. I almost feel like the feminine, it's more acceptable for the feminine to be out, particularly if you are in a female body. It's more so acceptable to be on this discovery of your sensuality and your magic that we couldn't for, right, hundreds and thousands of years. But this sister wound piece feels like a really important piece. Like that's a really big piece right now for women and just anyone in their feminine, right? Because it can also be men to men, like healing. How are they with being able to talk about their emotions or express their emotions? Men to men, men to women, whatever. But we'll just say sister wound because that, is kind of the the term. But that feels like a really important piece to heal, right? As we're going through this healing of the masculine. And so for you, you can feel into, when do you feel that competitive nature come up, or that, and it could be a good friend that you're happy for, but there's a part of you, right? Because it's always just the part. There's a part of you that's a little jealous or a little whatever, right?
Sideways.
Yes. That's a little sideways. And so the more we can heal that, because that's definitely coming up, and feeling into, right, like that Salem witch trial, like there were women and people, right, who accused other women. It wasn't just men, and men also died in the Salem witch trials.
We don't recommend the Salem Witch Museum in Salem. It was a disappointment.
Yeah, don't recommend. But like to feel into that Neptune piece, like Neptune is our spirituality and that higher love and that higher expression. And like, that's a part that throughout history, they have been trying to suppress, is that freedom to express your spirituality, like within, right? Like, I don't need to go to a church. I don't need to go to somebody else. If I want to, that's beautiful, but I don't have to do that to experience my own sovereignty. And so, yeah, all of those pieces feel like what we are in for sure, with our Pluto return, with Neptune being there, with all of the qualities that we're going through. We feel into, 2020, which was a big, like, we're just gonna shut down the whole world so that we're moving into, and a lot of people are saying they're feeling like 2021 is a more difficult year, because it's like the after the storm, like, right, like there's a storm and that jolting, but then what happens after, and all of the destruction and the cleanup that has to happen. So all of that is what we're in. So if you're feeling like a little overwhelmed or anxious and you have no idea why, there's a lot of things that we're in that are really big energetic pieces. So just, yeah, all of that.
Yeah. And 2021 is feeling big because energetically 2020 was so about what is your personal sovereignty. Like, really, it was a beautiful time to go inside, because we were all inside anyway. And really like work in your stillness, your silence, your own personal flow. The age of Pisces has been about farming out our sovereignty, looking for a savior outside of ourselves. And 2021, it has been about like standing in our sovereignty rather than farming out our sovereignty to public health, to the governments, to the school systems, to the systems that we got to see in 2020 don't work anymore, and largely haven't worked for a long, long time to serve where we're at now. We're trying to apply old solutions to present challenges. And a piece of our present challenge is standing in your own discernment and your own sovereignty rather than farming out your decisions and your control, which I think may bring us to like all of these sudden forward motion we're going to get in October with these outer planets suddenly like shifting and being like, and now we're going to go forward.
Yes.
And it's like through the end of the year, but we're just going to do October today.
Yeah, we're in it. So let's touch on the end of September. There's a couple of pieces, especially because we talked about Mars. So on the 25th, September 25th, Mars trines Saturn. They're both in air signs. So we talked about Mars is in Libra, Saturn is in Aquarius, and they're in a harmonious trine. It's activating, right? Mars brings that activation. And Saturn, we can feel into, Saturn's been in Aquarius all year. So it is this, if we're talking about like, okay, we're at the end of the year, there's this activation of what we've been working on all year. There's just another piece that gets activated for us. There's another piece, and it may not be about taking action, because again, the forward motion comes in October, but there's a piece that comes, and it's in Libra, so it can be with in relationship. It can also be new thoughts, new ideas, new perspectives, right? We have that Saturn in Aquarius. So that's just a really activating time. And combined with the next day, right? So this is all happening at the same time. The sun trines the north node, and the sun is in Libra. The north node is in Gemini. So we have this grand trine going on, right? With the sun and Mars and Saturn in the north node. And so the sun in the north node, right? So we talked about Mars and Saturn first, and then the sun in the north node. This is just exact, but it's all happening together. The sun is really illuminating, like, what is that truth? What is that deep truth for you? The north node is that guiding, light for us. It's that soul perspective, that soul voice. And the sun is illuminating that. So the end of September, we have that energy right after the equinox, and we're in that. And it does feel like this big activating and reminder of, what we've been through all year, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's beautiful, that trine. I know Vesta is moving into Scorpio too. So when I think about the Mars Saturn piece, Saturn is what our structure is. How do we want to structure? And being in Aquarius, what new structures, what new ways of holding ourselves can we bring in? And Mars is just being like, hey, maybe take some action and start to think about this. And then with Vesta and Scorpio, there's this deep, like, purging feeling that's going on. Like, what do you want to get rid of? How do you want to clean up your home, hearth, business, your online, invisible world life? So I just like, and that I'm bringing in that Vesta cleaning and purging and things, because how we structure our life is visible on this, like what the Kabbalists call the one-dimensional plane. This 1% of everything there is this very physical plane. And Vesta is like, okay, Saturn and Mars, I'm here in Scorpio. Let's get things cleaning. And Saturn is able to allow us to look at things differently. Like, who has stuff in their basement or their garage that they don't use? Can I see a show of hands? So many of us have so much physical stuff that we don't use, that we keep just in case. And that adds to this scarcity mindset that I need to hold on to this just in case. And I'm not saying be wasteful. I'm asking for discernment and wisdom in how you're structuring your world. Because all of those physical things that we hold on to carry energy.
Yeah, and the image I'm getting with Vesta moving into Scorpio is like holding a torch as she walks through this like underground cave. So on September 20th, right before the equinox, that's when Vesta moved into Scorpio. And Vesta to me is that like internal flame that we hold. She's home hearth, and she is that priestess, but she is that like internal flame that's there. She's a very sovereign archetype. So I always imagine that flame that never goes out. Sometimes it's a little more dim, sometimes it's really fiery. But I'm seeing her like walking through the caves of Scorpio, like bringing this torch. And really, right, like illuminating the pieces that need to be seen. Like, oh, there's that little crevice over there that we didn't see. And there's that little spot over there that we didn't see before. So
the piles in our lives that we think that if we ignore them, they're going to go away. The piles don't go away. And Vesta, she is in there with her torch being like, it's time. Like, let's deal with this.
Yeah. And then we get on the 27th, September 27th, Mercury retrograde. So we get to go, right, like deeper inward. And that's in Libra. We did a whole podcast on it, so I won't get into that. But he is retrograde from September 27th through October 18th in Libra, right? So our relationships and that inner balance, like how can we find inner balance, and just looking at all the pieces that we need to see, right, about ourselves. So that comes on the 27th.
I'm excited about this whole season. There's something about shifting into this season that feels interestingly energizing, but very grounded energy. One of my favorite little memes in the whole world is that Mother Nature is about to show us how beautiful it is to let things go. This autumnal in the northern part of the world, like the leaves falling. And then with Vesta down there in Scorpio and her torch, like there is this really like, it's house cleaning time. Your thoughts, your actions, your viewpoints. What are you holding on to that doesn't serve or that adds to the division? Because if we're adding to the division, we are not part of creating harmony.
Yeah. And speaking of harmony, we have on September 29th, Venus trine Neptune. So Venus, we've been talking about in Scorpio, trines Neptune in Pisces. And so that's a harmonious aspect. They're both in water. It's a very like mystical, mysterious, spiritual energy. And yeah, there's just this quality to it. I always talk about, Venus as love, and Neptune as kind of like the higher octave of like that divine love, like Venus as the human love and Neptune as the divine love. And so I love when these two come together. Like it's just such a beautiful energy, but it also can come with, sometimes there's those deep undercurrents that Venus is trying to get to, and Neptune can sometimes be escapism. And like he can be so far, out there. So just being aware of that too, like, being grounded that day and just allowing the things, maybe taking a couple days, like as things come up, like, okay, I'm going to sit with that for a little bit. But also helpful that day is the sun trine Saturn. So it feels like there's this like, Saturn's very much about like, he's a realist. And the sun is illuminating that they are also in a harmonious aspect. So it feels like although sometimes that escapism with Neptune can be there, that day feels pretty good because we also have the sun and Saturn being like, okay, no, but we're also going to shine a light while you're in this like mysterious, mystical energy. We're going to also shine a light on the truth and what's real here. So that feels really, really, like a yummy day.
Yeah, I love me some Saturn.
Yeah. And the next day, as we close out September, so like all in that same energy, we have Venus squaring Jupiter. So there's a big expansion to all of that, as if it wasn't like enough to have all of that. So really that day with like Venus, Neptune, Sun and Saturn, and then we have Jupiter being like, and we're going to we're going to expand this. And it's in a square to Venus. So there may be some challenges or things that we haven't seen, like some of the tough pieces. Jupiter is going to be like, okay, but this is something that needs to be seen for this all to kind of come together.
Yeah. No, that it just feels like we're moving into bigger stuff than we've done before. In hopes that we're ready to actually stand up and overcome, come together internally, like get right with yourself.
Yeah, that's what this time really, really feels like is, and we've been in this, right, of this, there's been so many planets retrograde that we've been in this, like getting right within, getting really solid and balanced within, so that as this forward motion comes, and the first one that goes direct is Pluto. So we talked about Pluto a little bit, and he's been retrograde since April. I feel like we've been in this internal like looking at power within. And so we've been going within with that, of kind of upgrading our systems and this internal perspective on like, where do I really believe in truth? Like Pluto is about the depths. He is not about the surface level. He is like, what is the deepest truth? And that's what we're going to find. And that's what we're going to stand for. And it's all been within, right? So as it goes direct in October, and you may even feel this because it's everybody, women or men, it's our own masculine, but you may find this in the men in your life, that they've been in this kind of internal place with power since April, and then it's going to go direct, that we're going to have this shift outwards, right? And then if you are, regardless, you're masculine, we've all been in that, right? I find that if you are in a female identifying body versus a male identifying body, there is a different quality to how we experience our feminine or masculine. And we want to be balanced in both. We want to be able to express both. But often you have an essence that is kind of like your go-to. Like, I really love, this feels like my truth. And I love expressing both, but this is kind of my essence. So just feeling into that Pluto he's been retrograde since April. So he is the first one that stations direct on the new moon in October. So October 6th, we have a new moon in Libra at 13 degrees of Libra, which also feels like at 13, I just love the number 13. It's that feminine number.
It's a great number.
It's a great number. And to have that on a new moon, like, right. And there's that balance there of the feminine, like the new moon is this very feminine energy, to have the number 13 there. And then we get Pluto stationing direct. There's this beautiful balance of the feminine and masculine. And it's also a new moon conjunct Mars opposing Chiron. So there's big activation, as if Pluto stationing direct wasn't enough. We have Mars there, and there's also deep healing with Chiron available. So that moon feels really, really potent.
Love your little fingers.
Very potent. Yeah, and then to have Pluto stationing direct that day, which he's been retrograde since April, like that, the outer planets, right, they are on these longer journeys with their retrogrades. So yeah, that's October 6th.
It's super good. This inward, this Pluto as this masculine who is Lord of the underworld. Like, for me, that translates to he's kind of the ruler of the psyche, the stuff that we don't see, the stuff that we push down, the stuff that we push away. And a big, big piece of his light and his exaltation and his magic is that he wants all of that. He wants all of it. And it's definitely something that I have been seeing with my clients who are in male bodies, is that this has been a struggle. Like, if they're doing the work, if they're unwrapping, if they're doing the self-discovery, if they're doing the self-inquiry, if they're unwrapping and diving into their subconscious, and well, why do I think that? What is this really about? Does this serve me? Like, they've been struggling. And so I just like, I'm just going to take off my hat to all of you men out there that are in it. Because it hasn't been easy. And I'm not saying it's going to get easier. I'm just letting you know that like, we see you. As this deep dive and this deep, like, ooh, why do I think that? Does that serve me? I had a great conversation with a girlfriend the other day about that. One of the questions they ask when they do jury selection is, do you have a close family member or a friend that's ever been incarcerated? And the thought process behind that is, well, if you have a close family member or friend that's ever been incarcerated, you then know that good people can make bad decisions. And well, yes, good people can make bad decisions, but it's also founded in this place that part of our energy is that just because you're genetically related to somebody, you think that they're good. And for me, that so ties back into the distortion of valuing our genetic line as a source of inheritance and control and power gathering. Like, if I can say you're my legitimate son, I can maintain my power line. And so it was just, this person, I had a big talk, and she was like, I don't understand why you think that's misogyny. And I was like, well, because it works on the premise that just because you're related to somebody, they're therefore good. But we're all genetically related to somebody. And everybody makes bad decisions. Some people make bigger, badder decisions than others. And it is such a game of consolidation of power and wealth. And it's been really fascinating for me to watch it come up in the people around me as they start to wrestle with it.
Yeah. And I think collectively, we're going to see some really interesting stuff as Pluto goes direct.
Mm-hmm.
So that's right. We can always feel into what
game on, people.
Yeah. What does this mean for us? And then what is happening collectively? And so I think that's going to be, again, we talked about, especially because in the US, we're coming up on our Pluto return, which again affects many other countries, right? Like the, right, especially like England was connected to us, right? Like when that happened, they were very much involved. And so there's other pieces that are affected as well, but we feel into the Pluto return. And as he goes direct, that's going to have an effect collectively, right? And I feel like because so many countries just watch us, it's going to be like, what's going on there? And it does, right? And all, it's a ripple, everything affects everything. So that's just a piece to feel into too, of as he goes direct, it's going to have a definite collective ripple. And then the next day, Venus leaves Scorpio. So she enters Sagittarius. So that is a fiery, it's a sign of higher wisdom and exploration. So I think, as these planets are moving direct, Venus moves into a sign of exploration. It's like, okay, and here we go. So that as well feels right, like a fiery little.
It's back to that, like, do your research, pull back the layers, learn more. Like, if you want to double down and dig into your position, learn why. Explore, like, use that Venus and Sagittarius exploration energy to explore more, because Sagittarius is also the philosopher and the teacher. So if you're going to want to share your opinions with everyone else on why you are right, like, dig down, layer in. look at as much as you can find and just keep going, keep layering in. You can't go deep enough.
Yes. And that's an important piece to remember. Like the opposite of Sagittarius is Gemini, which is the student and the curiosity. So that's a really important element to bring in, right? We can always think about, okay, how can we balance that? How can we balance that wanting to be right? You know, that idea that like that know-it-all, you can balance it with the teacher and the student.
Yep.
But that really fiery quality comes with Venus. And the next day, we get Mars conjunct the sun, followed by the next day, Mercury conjunct the sun. So talk about fire and activation. Like this is very, very fiery and activating. We have Mars who's activating conjunct the sun, and then Mercury the next day conjunct the sun. And that's called combust. When they're like in the heart of the sun, it's combust. And so that is a very activating time. Like that period of having Venus move into Sagittarius, this all happens from the 7th to the 9th. So it's all happening right around the same time. We get that fiery quality of Venus and Sag, and then we get Mars and Mercury conjunct the sun. Like very activating, because Mars is activating on his own. Whenever things are conjunct the sun, there's this illumination. And Mercury is in the middle of his retrograde, so he starts a new cycle right when he is conjunct the sun. And so Mercury is going to have some messages for us that day, right? There's a couple hours when he's in the heart of the sun when things become clear. On either side, it's called combust and it's not clear, but very activating those few days, very activating as we feel into we're in the middle of this forward motion, all the planets moving direct. Well, yeah, a lot of planets moving direct.
A number of them.
Feels like everything is moving direct, but we feel into that, like as we're in the middle of that, we get this really activating energy. So that is pretty big.
I was just thinking, it's like normally when we do this, I'll get a couple of big hits, like, ooh, pay attention to that day. And everything we go through, I'm like, ooh, full body goosebumps. And it could be that my house is chilly, or it could just be that we're moving into such big stuff that like every time you offer up an aspect, I'm like, oh, that's going to be a big one. Cause it's like full body goosebumps.
You can feel it though, right? That like
Yes.
I've had my eye on October for a while. I've had my eye on this period of time. And then as I go deeper and like more, I'm like, oh yeah, lots of activating energy. And you know, we can feel that we feel like, I feel like back when we had some of the eclipses earlier in the year, and there were some activations, and then we've been in this internal space for a bit, and so now we're coming back around, right, to some big activations, and this is a period of that time. So then the next day on October 10th, we have our next planet station direct, and that is Saturn. So Saturn has been retrograde since the end of May, and Saturn is just such a big energy for 2021. He's in Aquarius, and he's bringing this energy, especially because Jupiter is also in Aquarius. So there's expansion in that area of Aquarius. And so Saturn is in this position of really helping us bring things into being in that area of our chart. So you can reflect on what the year has brought, what you've been in, what has really been expanding for you this year. And you can look at your chart if you're familiar with your chart and remember, okay, what house is Aquarius for you? What planets do I have in Aquarius? What is kind of happening there? As Saturn stations direct, there's this forward motion of, okay, and now it's time to like get the tools out, get working on the things that have been in progress all year.
Absolutely. Leo's just decided to join us. I was thinking about that. If we're looking at where Aquarius is in our charts, that is where we're doing so much restructuring, and we're moving from this place where things could have felt really stuck or stagnant. You know, we're asking, well, why are things feeling stuck? And there's going to be this very physical shift that happens in October. We're going to see how the work that we've done with Saturn being internal, how have we shifted our internal structures? It's going to start as within, so without, like that alchemical principle of when we've made the internal shifts, we're going to see that reflected in our outer life. And we've had this beautiful summer period. Yeah, May, we'll call it summer. To really work on this, to be with it and to dig in. And Saturn, like, he can be the judge. He can be our internal part that sits in judgment of ourselves and in judgment of others. So going, like, reeling back to that Libra energy, the difference between judgment and discernment. And when we feel judged, it activates our Saturn. It pushes against, well, I've set up this structure for my life, and how dare you not be okay with it? Like, don't judge me. So I love that he's going to be shifting and being able to bring what we've shifted internally into the physical. Like, we're really going to see action on that. We're going to see it coming to life if we can just get curious and have awareness around it.
Yeah, and especially because we also have Jupiter stationing direct. So the following week on October 18th, Jupiter stations direct. And he is such a big part of Aquarius as well. He is bringing expansion. He's in a sign for about a year. So he has been in Aquarius for most of the year. He dipped into Pisces, but he's really bringing expansion to Aquarius this year. And so as he stations direct, also in Aquarius, he's in a trine to Mars the day he stations, right? So there's, like, it's not only do we have all of this happening, all of these, station direct periods, Mars is activating a lot of it. You can feel, right? Like Mars has popped in for a lot of this. And so there's this extra fiery activation that comes with it. But Jupiter, I really feel like once Jupiter and Saturn are direct, like, it's really go time for what we've been in all year. And that can come also with its challenges. As we feel into this whole period, Pluto is squaring Eris. They're right in a square. We talked about that earlier. And so there can be some pieces of chaos and or seemingly chaos, right? Because we have a choice do we kind of go into it and spin in the chaos, or can we take a step back and look at, like, what is the higher perspective here, right? We always have choice. But that's going to be dropping in as we're in this forward motion. So it's a really an important time to stay grounded, to, and I can feel it for myself of it's already starting, of like the reminders to, like, okay, take care of yourself. These are pieces that, you need to do to take care of yourself, because there's this big energy coming that's going to shift, and that's going to be forward motion, which is beautiful. And we can, so much can shift and change and really come into being in our lives. But we have to be grounded, right, in order to be able to kind of not get spun around in all of it. So that's just a reminder too, as we are going.
Looking at that Pluto Eris square, it feels valuable to bring in, if we were to apply Eris's energy to here and now, she's the street fighter. Like, she's over there in Aries. She's really earthy. And if we look, this is going to be the October 9th square is going to be their 5th square since 2020. And she is grassroots movement. She is thinking for yourself. She is claiming your sovereignty. And with Pluto over there in Capricorn, right now, he's top-down authority. We're going to tell you what to do. And so with this square energy, they're in conflict. We've got the self-thinkers, the street fighters, the social justice movement coming up against top-down authority, and they're meeting and they're pushing against each other. And I bet if I took the time to look up the other 3 Eris Pluto squares from 2020, we would see that they coincided with social justice movements and moments where our grassroots, on the ground street fighters rose up to push against top-down authority. It's just something to maybe get really curious about. And it brings us back to that like internal sovereignty, and moving with your internal sovereignty from a place of I'm educated about it.
Right. And the stronger you
do your
can
research,
the stronger you can be in your truth, and that soul truth, not the ego truth,
yeah,
but that like soul truth. The stronger you can be in that, the cleaner it'll be. Right? Because you can feel into, as that's happening, there's all this forward motion. So it's a big period of time to really be connected to your truth, and to not get swayed by other people, because there's gonna be a lot of passion. I mean, there already is a lot of passion, a lot of, right? And it's not about swaying other people, or, because that's not it. I was listening to a podcast, and they were talking about how actually asking someone to change their opinion or their view of something that they like really deeply believe, even if it's ego based, you're asking them to really go into like a death. Like, right? So like, are you really sure that you're ready to ask that of somebody?
yeah.
So it's not about swaying other people. It's really about just being so sure in your truth, that you can kind of weather the storm, right? Like you can be that solid, strong force that doesn't get, tumbled all around.
And really looking at, well, if you stand as a street fighter for this issue against the top-down authority that's pushing against this issue, where else is that top-down authority pushing on things? And are you really in alignment? If you're pushing against the top-down authority on this issue, but you're falling in line with the top-down authority on this other issue. I don't know if that's making any sense, but we've got all of these kind of columns of things that are really alive right now. So say you're somebody who is a social justice street fighter, that there needs to be equality, and we need to stop the racial bullshit that's going on in the United States because I'm fired up and I'm done. And you're pushing against this top-down authority that is suppressing rights and equality. And then at the same time, flip it over, and you're pushing back against people who are unvaccinated, and the same top-down authority is issuing the mandates. So where do you stand? Like, this is really sticky stuff. And to get really into that center, like Alexis was talking about, like really into your center. Do you know, or are you just listening to what you're being told? And so then I'm back to my research. I'm obviously on a research kick. Like, yeah. Where are you falling in line with the top-down authority? And where are you pushing against it? Where are you judging others because you're worried you're going to be judged?
Right. And it just to also add in, like, standing with that strong truth, it also, you can bring curiosity, and you can bring like flow and gentleness to it, because the ego wants to hold on to, this is the only truth I know, and I will never change my mind. And that isn't right. That isn't what we want. But it's more about like touching in and asking again and again, like being curious and learning. And as you learn more, okay, does this shift things for me? And for me, not for anybody else, for me. And right. So it's like, there's a solidness, but there's a flow to it. Like if that can make any sense, there's a solidness in yourself, but the willingness to shift and change for you, not for anybody else. I feel like that's the key piece, is for yourself. It's not shifting because somebody else asked or somebody else said this, it's for you. And so that like is going to be really, really important as we're in all of this forward motion. Also, just to drop in, because I didn't mention this as I was talking about Jupiter, but Jupiter had been retrograde since June 20th, which was the solstice. So, right, we can feel into that again of this expansion. He's been bringing expansion within ourselves since this time. And now he's going to be bringing expansion, and it's going to be an outward motion. So if you've been feeling like stuck or, you know, and I say stuck in quotation marks because, right, there's no stuck. We're as a collective, we're not used to being in that internal space versus the productive space. But if you've been feeling stuck or like things have just been kind of, you know, slow, that's because that was how it was supposed to be. There's supposed to be this inward expansion. Now there's an outward expansion with Jupiter stationing direct. So, and that same day, so October 18th, right, you can feel all of these things, they just kind of like are clumping together. That same day is when Mercury stations direct. So we talked about that. We have Mercury for a few weeks retrograde. And so he also stations the direct the day that Jupiter stations direct. All really close to full moon energy, because the 20th is a full moon. So that's where we can kind of, you know, end for this Libra season, what's going on, but just feeling into that too, that Jupiter and Mercury station direct, like right in that pre-full moon energy. And that's big. It's a full moon in Aries. Like all of this that we've been talking about in October, like it all has this very activating, fiery forward motion, expansion, like all of these words, right? Like if you just feel into all of those words, like it's pretty big. And again, to get solid and grounded and take care of yourself, because there's going to be some really beautiful insights and things that happen and forward motion that you've been waiting all year for. And it can be challenging. It can feel like, oh my gosh, I like, be careful what you wish for, because maybe I would rather be in that stuck place, you know, like, whoa, this is a whole different energy. I feel like I'm getting, you know, spun around. So yeah, it's all of that, but you can feel into, there's this big, expansive, activating, forward moving energy as we, as we kind of move through Libra season.
And a reminder that actual life, capital L life, is about change. Like if life was a stagnant thing, none of us would be here. Life is about change and growth, and that ability to move and shift and not get into that, like, I'm going to cling to this thing that I've got going on, this idea, this habit, this way of being, to move through life with an openness. And we can be open and like centered.
Yeah. And the archetype that's coming, which I think is a perfect archetype for Libra, is Parvati. So Parvati is a Hindu goddess of union, and she is both, like, she stood on one leg in the Himalayas. This is part of her myth. She stood on one leg in the Himalayas for thousands of years, like strengthening her inner yogini, like that masculine, right, like strong force within her, so much so that she attracted the greatest, you know, masculine energy of Shiva. And so she strengthened that in herself, but she was also at the same time so connected to her feminine, like flowing, and that being able to be connected to her emotions and love. And she was that. So she's balanced. She's this very beautiful archetype of inner balance, of she strengthened her inner masculine, that ability to stand strong within herself, but she still was innately feminine, and this ability to flow and to be connected to herself, and that gentle energy. So she's both. And so I feel like that's a really beautiful energy to bring in as we're talking about it. Like Parvati, like that was her deal. She was really balanced in both her feminine and her masculine. And it wasn't until she strengthened her inner masculine that she attracted Shiva. Because when she was just in her feminine, she wasn't balanced. Right? Like that's where the myth starts, is she's just so much in her feminine, so much of this giving love, so much in this beautiful energy. But it wasn't until she strengthened her inner masculine where she could be really strong and was like, yes, I am that, but I am also strong. And so as we're talking about this, like, you know, connecting to that balance to get strong within the truth within yourself, but to flow, she's who comes to mind.
Which I love, because she was actually one of the energies that held the workshop I just did on Saturday. So everybody who is listening that was at the workshop on Saturday, you will remember that when we called the directions, Pavarti was one of the energies that we called in to hold the circle for everything Alexis just said. I'm not going to repeat it.
I love it. Yeah. So we'll leave you with her. She is beautiful, gorgeous Libra energy.
Yes, she's super delicious.